Now, President-elect Donald Trump's team has reportedly prepared more than 100 executive orders on the first day of his presidency. Likely topping Trump's agenda is border security and deportations, issues which he campaigned on. Trump and his team are also planning an executive punch on scene in modern times as he wields power in new and untested ways. The Trump White House is also expected to roll back many of the executive orders by outgoing Democratic President Joe Biden. Several of Trump's choices for top administration positions are going through Senate confirmation hearings or will soon. To break down Donald Trump's inauguration this Monday into perspective, we have been joined by our partners of the VOA, the Voice of America. Let's welcome Jackson Mvunganyi. He now joins us live from Washington. Hello, Jackson. Thanks very much for talking to us. It's a very big moment in the United States, isn't it?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. Yes, indeed. It's such a big moment, a historic moment here in Washington, D.C. And, it's really cold. The temperatures are freezing. I think it's about 24 degrees outside. So most of the events that were supposed to be held outside are now indoors. But there's a lot of anticipation despite the freezing temperatures in the nation's capital here.
Yeah, we saw a hotly contested campaign. The elections also was very serious and very close between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, how are Americans waking up now to the D-Day that Donald Trump will assume the presidency?
Absolutely. Again, the Americans woke up with a lot of anticipation, which explains why thousands, over 250,000 people were expected to come to the inaugurations here in the nation's capital. However, due to the freezing temperatures, the events that were supposed to take place outside are now going to be taking place inside in the Capitol Rotunda, which is explaining why I'm seated here in this cozy room talking to you instead of being outside where the action would have been taking place. But yeah, in less than an hour, it's about 10:50 here. In about an hour and 20 minutes, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. For a little bit of history, this is the 78th presidential inauguration in U.S. history, a tradition that began on April 30th of 1789 when George Washington was sworn in as the nation's first president. And so at midday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, the official transfer of power from President Biden to President Trump will take place, fulfilling that commitment to the 20th Amendment, which stipulates that a U.S. president's four-year term ends at noon today, January 20th, with the president-elect being sworn in shortly after. So in 1 hour, again, the Trump administration will officially start.
Now, you just spoke about the transfer of power. Let's just highlight some few things about that. How has Joe Biden's last moments as president been? Have there been any meetings between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, probably early this morning?
Yes, absolutely. So they met up today. Donald Trump and his wife Melania visited the White House for a tea ceremony. That's a traditional tea ceremony that takes place between an incoming president and the incumbent president, which in a way signals that transfer of power. They held a cordial meeting. President Trump visited a memorial site for the soldier of the unknown to lay the wreath, and other ceremonies that involve both President Trump and soon to be former President Joe Biden in 1 hour. Again, these are all ceremonial that are part of the U.S. tradition of seeing that peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the next.
You just spoke about
let me just say real quick also, this is not the first time that the inauguration is being held indoors. I think it has been held 4 times before, and the last one was in 1985, I believe, during the inauguration of President Ronald Reagan, who was a Republican, so also a kind of a hero to Donald Trump. So there's a symbolism into the fact that it's being held indoors 40 years later.
There's been so much anticipation over there as to who could attend the inauguration taking place this morning in Washington. We already know that Trump has a very good friendship with some of the major corporate bosses over there. Who are we expecting there on ground at the inauguration?
Yeah, a lot of guests anticipated to join President Donald Trump as he swears in, President-elect right now until an hour from now. But reports say that his guest list will include some prominent Republican allies, conservative leaders, and major corporate executives that are aligned in many ways with his policies and politics. And these will include Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, so to say, Jeff Bezos, a billionaire owner of Amazon, Mark Zuckerberg of Meta, also known as Facebook. And internationally, we know that there are a few leaders, world leaders, that kind of align with Trump's approach to governance, particularly from nations with nationalist leaders. They are expected to attend. It has been reported that President Trump invited President Xi Jinping of China, but Xi Jinping declined. He will not attend. Instead, he sent his vice president, who is in town, to attend the swearing-in ceremony.
All right, let's go back to the pre-inauguration rally yesterday of Donald Trump. It was one that was so much punctuated with so many announcements which Donald Trump made. We have been hearing about the 100 executive orders which the team has prepared, bordering on border security, as well as immigration, not leaving out the economy. What does this tell Americans about the president they are expecting this morning?
Yeah, President Trump's declaration to sign these 100 orders on the first hour of his presidency really underscores this intent to act decisively and immediately on his campaign promises by signing this sweeping number of executive orders. He says that he wants to strengthen the border. He says he wants this no-nonsense approach to fulfilling campaign promises around issues of energy, prices, the economy. This strategy really kind of shows or reflects his commitment to, in many ways, reshaping the policies around these critical issues that he campaigned on. Again, immigration, economic regulation, and other issues, energy. He's been talking about, drill, baby drill has been kind of a mantra. He says America has to be energy dependent. It has the resources but it has been curtailed by all these regulations. So we're expecting to see these orders that will kind of lift some of these bans on drilling in some areas that are on some lands that are owned by the federal government. We've heard that there might be some mass deportations starting from cities like Chicago. But all of this, again, in 1 hour, that's when we get the full details of what is going to happen and what this will look like. However, some critics argue that such an aggressive start to his administration is likely to sideline any potential collaboration with Congress, even though the Republican Party right now controls both chambers of the House and then the Senate. But potentially this could deepen some of these partisan divisions that we've seen over the last couple of years, and raising questions really about the the sustainability of these kind of unilateral decisions, if you don't have everybody on board, how effective is your governance?
Now, let's flip the page to the other side, Jackson. How have Americans received this news of Donald Trump carrying out sweeping reforms in the first hours of his presidency? Is there some feeling of fear, anxiety, or maybe great expectations for a very bright future?
Yeah. Well, it depends on which side of the political aisle you're on, or how you will be directly impacted by some of these, orders. If you are an immigrant in this country, you've been living here for a number of, regardless of how long you've been living here, if you've not regularized your stay, it's most likely going to affect you one way or another. We know that Trump has talked about how these orders of, the deportations will take place, targeting mostly immigrants who have committed crimes in this country. So a lot of anxiety within the immigrant community about who might or might not be targeted. However, there's also kind of anticipation on, for the good things that are going to happen. We know that there's a lot of economic anxiety in the country. And so what he does in regards to helping people with their pocketbook issues, those are things that most people are looking forward to. How do I, how does my dollar buy more food at the grocery store? How much gas will cost? Again, we might be worrying about the bigger issues, but the regular American really is thinking about in terms of the pocketbook issues for him, the groceries, books for their kids, clothes, things of that nature that really impact their daily lives.
Surely, before we go, let's look at the African perception of the presidency of Donald Trump. You're there in the United States. You must have spoken to some Africans who are residing there. What is the general perception as far as Trump's incoming presidency is concerned? And how could the relations between Africa and USA be shaped henceforth?
That's a good question. Many Africans are hoping for better relations between the continent and the U.S. with this new presidency. We know in the first term of Donald Trump, there was some tension where he made some remarks that were considered to be derogatory towards the continent, talking about the continent being quote unquote, shithole countries. But we know that in the last couple of years, there has been more of an outreach between his campaign, between his people that represent him, with members of the African political class, the business class. So there's been kind of these synergies and collaborations that have been taking place, and there is hope that in the coming years that more of this will continue. There's also this, feeling among Africans that there will be sort of a hands-off approach towards African politics and African economics, that there will be quote unquote less meddling in African politics. That is something a lot that is reflected in many of the conversations that I've had with members of Africa's political class, who say that America tends to meddle a lot in their local politics, which is not good for them, and that they hope that Donald Trump, with his nationalist outlook, more America First agenda, that he will kind of not think about Africa in those terms, where everything that there's going to be you're thinking about in terms of all these preconditions, whether in terms of aid, democracy, human rights expectations, or things of that nature, that there will be less of that this time around in the next 4 years than there has been in the past. And so again, some division in there, where you see members of the opposition parties in Africa who would want to see a more pragmatic approach to these relations, where America has held their leadership in check whenever there is abuse of power. And so they're hoping that America continues to have that moral high ground and act as quote unquote the policeman of democracy and freedom around the world. In terms of the locals, the diaspora community, which meets billions of dollars on the continent, there's hope that there's more engagement with them. We've seen that in the last couple of years, the U.S., the African diaspora has really, been active in participating in local politics, whether it's going to the polls, whether it's running for local offices. And the next 4 years really will be very critical in how we see that kind of movement towards a much more inclusive environment towards the African diaspora, and much more engaged African diaspora in terms of their politics and their economics.
Thank you very much, Jackson Mvunganyi, for your time. It has been a pleasure to have this very great discussion with you. We hope to have you some other time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
All right, that was Jackson Mvunganyi from the Voice of America African Service, throwing more light on the inauguration of Donald Trump. We'll continue the news after the break.